fall on that son of a bitch again. He cracked open a river too, he beat me Sunday through and through, and such eagle my unconscious frame. I won me healthy sheriff fights, well lucky souls still have me life since Mickey Flynn beat me dumb and lame.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Disciples of Ed here on the Always Next Year podcast network. I'm your host, Rob. Today I am joined by Steve, who was balls deep in EASHL throughout most of the day. How'd that go for you, Steve?
Couple wins and a couple losses, but a lot of bullshit.
Any goals scored?
Yeah. I alternate between. I played every position besides goalie, but yeah, I had quite a few points. The last game I played, I had about 4 assists. So.
Any fights?
No. I prefer not to fight because I prefer me to be on the ice.
Oh, come on, you gotta go for the Gordy though at some point. I mean, your boy Knack just did it the other week.
He did, and I love the player that he is, and I like to think that my EASHL player is a bit better, but I just don't trust my teammates enough to be off the ice for 5 minutes at least. And then with EASHL, it can be a lot longer.
Yeah, fair enough. The teammates usually suck in EASHL, especially the defenseman who's yellow, I think is the one that's always like the worst fucking defenseman out there.
Yeah, that's right, D. Yeah.
Yeah, Yellow's always the one who wants to join the rush and try to score as many goals as possible as being a defenseman. The worst fucking player on the team.
I'm kind of like that, but I'm lefty and I shoot right-handed so I can get the one-timers. But yeah.
Fair enough. All right, well, Shane unable to join us today. He was having quite a fiasco getting his truck inspected, so shout out to whoever the fuck was inspecting his truck. Good job taking fucking forever with that. Anyway, the Flyers remain hot, 3 wins in a row, 2 against Columbus, the home and home, which they're able to sweep, a nice little comeback in Columbus from down 3-1, winning that one on a Kevin Hayes goal in overtime. And then yesterday, a 4-2 win over the Winnipeg Jets. 3 of the goals coming from that, I believe it was the third line, 2 from Lawton, 1 from Pitlick. Flyers, last few games, they've been scoring a lot of goals. Haven't all been pretty goals. They've been getting a lot of lucky bounces, a lot of traffic in front of the net and getting those deflections. But really, 4 lines deep, all 4 lines having a huge impact for this team down the stretch.
Oh yeah, definitely. Lawton was just insane against Winnipeg. He scored the 2 goals, and I think Pitlick did score as well. But Lawton did like every single thing he can do. I mean, he provided great defense from forward. He scored goals. He made plays. He blocked a shot with his dick, and then he blocked a shot with I think his hand or something. He had 2 injury scares from block shots. So Lawton truly deserved like MVP of that game.
Yeah, it's such a shame that he couldn't get that empty net goal to seal the hat trick.
Oh yeah, he tried. He did try, but it's just when the net's so open, I guess accuracy is just gone.
Yeah, I guess so. But anyway,
there was someone on him. There was a couple people on him, so blame it on that.
Either way, a hell of a performance from Scott Lawton yesterday. And the Flyers, like I said, they've been scoring goals in all different kinds of ways. The Konechny scored one off his ass the other night in Columbus. They had a number of deflection goals in the home game against Columbus. Pitlick scoring on that double deflection goal that went off his leg and then went off a jet yesterday. So the dirty goals are coming in. They're not scoring a lot of finesse goals, but they don't need them because they've done such a great job of getting guys to the front of the net and creating pressure, creating a distraction for the opposing goaltender. And that's really what's been working for them throughout the season. They've done an excellent job of that over the past few games.
They really have, and it is excellent to see like the depth providing to where people are like, hey, Drew's not having that great of a year. He's still having like a good year, but he doesn't need to be so great because the depth is finally here and producing to alleviate it from him.
Well, he has played very well of late. In fact, he just had what was an 8-game, I believe, point streak that was snapped yesterday.
Yeah, I do believe so. I think it was like 13-ish points, I think. But yeah, it was a lot of it on the power play, I think. But as long as the power play gets going, he'll have points, and then other than that, the depth is there for him to just do what he does and just creating opportunities and making opportunities for other players. And the points are coming, the Flyers are rolling, we're all good.
Absolutely, and they've got a very winnable game coming up on Tuesday night as they host the San Jose Sharks, who, for the first time in a while, are actually a pretty fucking bad team. And dealing with some injury woes as well.
The cap and everything catches up to you, man. Cap and
Yeah,
age.
it really does. It really does. And I think the Sharks made a huge mistake. Well, they did let Pavelski go in the offseason, but trying to hold on to some of these guys like Jumbo Joe and all them a little bit too long instead of, letting those guys go and letting some of the younger players come in. And that's kind of biting them in the ass right now. They're having a rough season. Erik Karlsson, who they spent big money on, out for the year. I believe, was it Hurdle? Is the other one who's out for the year now?
Yeah, Hurdle is. I think Timo Meier just got hurt, I think. I could be wrong. I'm probably getting those two mixed up.
Yeah, you know what?
Timo Meier's fine. Timo Meier's fine. He's on my fantasy team, and I just checked it.
So that's how you know. Yeah, I think it is Hurdle who's out for the year. Yeah, lots of injury woes. The Flyers played them, and then they have another home and home back-to-back with the Rangers coming up. First one at Wells Fargo, and then the second one Sunday afternoon at Madison Square Garden. So how big... The Flyers, they only have 2 games this week, whereas the teams around them in the standings that currently have games in hand on them are all playing either 3 or 4 games. On one hand, that gives those teams a chance to, catch up or pass the Flyers. But on the other hand, by the time we reach next week, those teams will no longer have those games in hand on the Flyers. So how big is this week for them?
For the Flyers or the other teams?
For the Flyers.
Oh, well, we're playing the Sharks and the Rangers. The Sharks, it could be a trap game, kind of like New Jersey was a couple weeks ago, but I think they pull it out. I would probably start Elliott this game. And then the Rangers is kind of a tough game because the Rangers are still technically in the hunt.
And they've been playing some pretty good hockey. I think they've reeled off 7 in their last 8 games. Yeah,
they're really going by their goaltending, which isn't even including Henrik Lundqvist, which is crazy. But it's big. Every game from here on out is fucking huge because this is the playoff race. This is deadline day is Monday. Every game is huge, especially with how tight the whole Metropolitan Division is, which coincides with the wild card. With the Flyers where they're at now, every game is still huge. Like they have potential to fall out if they lose too much. They have potential to even win the fucking division if they continue to play well. It's crazy. It's a crazy time. It's every game from here on out is huge.
Yeah, it's crazy. Look, they're only 5 points behind the Washington Capitals for the division lead. They're 3 points behind Pittsburgh after the Capitals ended up beating the Penguins today. The Penguins do have a game in hand, but the Flyers, they're very much right there in the middle of things. They're only clear of the playoff cutoff, the wild card cutoff by 3 points, but then again, they're only a few points away from being the best team in the division. So it's a really, really tight race in the Eastern Conference. And as we said before, a really deep conference. And coming up, the Flyers are going to have to go through that because they have that back-to-back against the Rangers. Follow that with a game at Washington with a chance to win that season series there. And then they host Carolina. And then after that, they have a game against Boston, a game against Tampa. So it's going to be some tough sledding over these next couple of weeks. And they've got to continue doing what they've been doing well if they want to be successful during this stretch.
100% agreed. And if they can add someone for a very cheap player for cheap to maybe solidify, maybe the fourth line, even though they've been playing really well, then I think that's something you got to do. But overall, they seem to have great chemistry and just a great hot streak building right now. And yeah, I can't really say anything that they can do better because everything they've done has seemed to be great.
So you mentioned adding a player and the the NHL trade deadline is tomorrow. Do you have anybody in mind the Flyers should be targeting to make a deal?
I mean, Peugeot would be fantastic.
That's come up to the top of just about every conversation. I believe Shane, that was the guy that he pointed out in our last episode.
Yeah, and then there's Peugeot would be the most expensive option, I would think. Derek Grant, I believe it is, from Anaheim. He's having a really good year on a really bad team. He would probably solidify the fourth line. Vladimir Nemesnikov on Ottawa as well. He's more of a winger, but if you trade for him, you're expecting Patrick to be back and healthy. But there's so many guys that could be had like a fourth line center role. But I meant to look it up and I forgot to. So there's the names I have right now. Is Peugeot, Nemesnikov, Grant. And
see, my thing is, you mentioned that Peugeot would be expensive, and I just don't know. Would he be worth what Ottawa would be asking for in exchange? I can't talk in exchange for him.
Yeah, it's strange. I definitely don't want to trade a first round pick, but at the same time, we have so many prospects. Thank you, Ron Hextall. We have so many prospects that we could deal, and then still be fine with our prospect pool. And then even if you give up a second or a third rounder, you're still not hurt because again, you have all these prospects that Ron Hextall gathered for you.
That's a fair point, and that's probably part of the reason why Peugeot is at the top of everybody's trade list for the Philadelphia Flyers. I do know that the one guy who I brought up on the last episode, Andre Casa, was traded by Anaheim to Boston, so he's off the list right now. And in exchange for him, Anaheim picked up David Backes, defenseman Axel Anderson, who I literally know nothing about other than that he's probably from fucking Sweden, judging by that name. And they got a 2020 first-round pick, which is a pretty damn good haul. And honestly, it's a lot more than I thought that Anaheim would be looking for in exchange for Casa. So Boston pulled off that deal. He's a guy who I had on the radar for the Flyers. That obviously is not going to happen now. I would say that I would not be surprised if the Flyers actually do kick the tires on Joe Thornton. What do you think about the potential of Joe Thornton coming to Philadelphia?
I think it's 0-0. If he's going anywhere, it's going to be fucking to Pittsburgh, unfortunately, or Boston. I just envision those two teams being able to get Joe Thornton. One, because San Jose is a stand-up organization. They will only trade him to where he wants to go, and I believe those two teams are on the top of his lists. But another thing is, as I'm looking at the trade bait thing on TSN, is Vincent Trocheck on Florida. That's a guy I might trade Ghost for.
Does Florida fancy him as someone that they want to hold on to in an attempt to actually try to make the playoffs this year, though?
I feel like they're falling, though, and I think they're trying to this would be a pure what they call a hockey deal. So Ghost for Trocheck. I think, hey, they kind of up their offense from defense, and then, I mean, they're already playing two defensemen at forward anyway, so it's just something that I just gathered thoughts on right now.
So also looking at San Jose, and they have a much younger center probably. I'm trying to find how old Thornton is here. Thornton's 40, so 14 years younger. They got Barclay Goodrow, is 26 years old, comes in with a cap hit of $925,000. He's got a year left on his deal after this one. I think that
he'll be an RFA too. I do like that name.
RFA.
I do like that name. I do like him as a player. He really impressed me on the last playoffs. He's the guy I would definitely go for. I would be willing to sacrifice a draft pick and second round pick at most for him.
Yeah, and he's kind of a name who flies under the radar a little bit. Not much. His name hasn't been mentioned a whole lot in really any of these trade rumors. But yeah, I'm with you. I would be willing to throw in a second round pick, maybe a prospect or two, a mid-level prospect, not a high prospect. But yeah, Barkley Goodrow, definitely a name to pay attention to. Another one, if they're looking for a short-term rental fix, is Tyler Ennis of Ottawa. He's going to be UFA at the end of this season, but comes in with a cap hit of just $800,000. So certainly a very affordable piece right there too.
Yeah, I just don't see Tyler Ennis really like fitting in like what we're trying to replace. I do like Tyler Ennis as a player. I always have. I see him going to a team like Edmonton. There's been rumors about that. Mike Commodore even was saying, "Hey, Tyler Ennis, pack your shit for Edmonton," which is always funny. Mike Commodore is always fucking hilarious during trade deadline day.
Oh man, I just remember him using that line when Babcock got fired up in Toronto.
Yeah, because he absolutely hated Mike Babcock.
Yeah, it's a pretty funny feud that they've got going on there.
Yeah, I'm not too keen on getting Tyler Ennis per se. Maybe Nate Thompson from Montreal, for like maybe like a fourth or something. He might get a little bit more, maybe like a third, but he's a guy that would probably like be a nice fourth line center. But other than that, it's just, Chris Tierney from Ottawa. Like, these are all names. It just really depends on the price. I'm willing to give up some prospects, certain prospects I want to keep. But, like, I really don't mind as long as the player is cheap, our cap isn't fucked, and we're not giving away, like, a really top prospects. I just think
pretty much.
There's a move to be made out there, and I guess we'll see tomorrow.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun day tomorrow. I will be working, but I can guarantee you that every chance I get, I'll be hitting that refresh button on Twitter, and I'll be checking all the TSN and whatnot, the trade trackers throughout the course of the day. And I'm sure that once something happens, you'll probably have an update for everyone as well, because you usually find that stuff out before anybody else does, at least with Disciples of Ed here. So,
yeah.
It's going to be an interesting day for certain. I wouldn't be surprised if the Flyers don't do anything. I wouldn't be surprised if they do end up making a move.
Yeah, I actually wouldn't be angry if they didn't make a move.
Neither would I.
Keep the chemistry going. Like, you remember 2011 when we traded for Christopher Stieg?
Oh my God! Don't remind me.
I was like, this is actually a decent trade, but like we have such chemistry going in right now. And it seemed like you kind of threw it off, along with Dry Island, obviously. Like you kind of threw it off, and then, Laviolette fucked up Bobrovsky's development with the Flyers. And, we all know the story now. Here we are, though. And it's like, I'm not against a move, but I'm also quite okay standing pat.
Yeah, I think what they've got right now, it's proven to... It works. I mean, look where they are in the standings. Look how well they've played of late. They really don't absolutely need to make a move, but if they can find a guy like a Barkley Goodrow or someone of that caliber for an affordable price, then it would be worthwhile to kick the tires on and consider pulling the trigger. But as you said, I would not be unhappy if they just stand pat tomorrow and are confident in going forward with the team that they have right now.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's one real area that I think that you're trying to improve going into this deadline, and that's probably fourth line center. No offense to Connor Bunnaman, he's really developed pretty well in his his second call up now. He's developed chemistry with Raffle and Aubie Kubel, but I just think that's a position that you would want to upgrade. If Nolan Patrick can come back, then you obviously put him at the third line center and then move Lawton down. Something that has always excited me is the idea of a Tyler Pitlick, Scott Lawton, Nicholas Aubie-Kubel fourth line. It would just be phenomenal as a fourth line. They hound you, they defend, they could score, they click everything you want from a fourth line, and they're not that expensive.
Yeah, it'll be fun to watch, and as you mentioned, they can score. That would be some sneaky offense. Pitlick has He scored the goal yesterday. It was the seventh of the season. Obviously, the multi-goal game from Lawton, who he has 12 goals, which is a career high, but he's only played in 42 games. So if you extend that over an 82 game season, he's on a 24, 25 goal pace almost right there.
Yeah.
So Scott Lawton doing more offensively in the time that he's had than most people really realize, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Scott Lawton, he really found it at left wing earlier this year, and then they had to move him back to center, and he continued strong play. So it's really good to see. When we drafted him, I 100% wanted Ole Mata instead, and we didn't get him. And it actually has worked out. Ole Mata is not that great, but people are lauding Scott Lawton as the next Mike Richards, which I want to go that far, but he has been a very, very good bottom six player, and a bottom six player that any playoff team would want.
Yeah, absolutely. He's kind of been that energizer bunny of sorts for the team. He'll come out, he'll score a big goal at some point in the game. Sometimes he'll score a goal like he did yesterday early on, and they'll just be able to feed off of that. Really, he's a Swiss Army knife, kind of like we always say that Michael Raffle is a Swiss Army knife, but I think that Scott Lawton is that maybe even more so than Raffle is at this point in the season.
I kind of agree. I love Michael Raffle, but I just think Lawton has more of like the potential of like going up in the lineup and producing points. Raffle has that right now because of his kind of chemistry, and like he's used to playing with like Drew and Voracek from years prior. But I think Lawton could go up there and do the same thing. But yeah, I love Michael Raffle, but I did want him traded. I think it was last year before he got his extension at the deadline. But they extended him, and I do appreciate what he brings to the team. But Lawton is definitely the better talented player.
So Lawton now one of 9 guys that the Flyers have in double digits in goal scoring, and really this team has shown off their depth. The first line, obviously, they're going to be counted on to score goals, but the second line, the third line, to an extent, even the fourth line, going out there and producing offensively. Is that part of what makes this team such a dangerous team going towards the playoffs? Is the fact that they can roll 4 lines and any of those 4 lines can beat you?
Yes, it is. Against the Jets, Vigneault kind of did sit the fourth line, which I was kind of upset about because I thought Bunneman and Albie-Kubel could have brought like some needed energy at the time. But I'm not an NHL coach. But that being able to roll 4 lines is it's a threat. Also, being able to trust your first and second defensive pairs as much as they can. And then even the third pair, even if it is Robert Hagg and Justin Braun, that you can still trust them for a lot more than we could in 2010 with our third pair, basically. But this is the most complete team we've had since probably 2010. And even then, we hardly had a third defensive pair.
It feels so damn good, doesn't it?
It does. It does.
And we actually have goaltending. We're not going to be relying on Brian Boucher and Michael Layton in the playoffs this year.
Yeah.
We actually have goaltending, which is the biggest thing.
It is, and I fully trust Carter Hart in a playoff series. We haven't seen him there yet, but we will this year, I believe. It's just a completely different thing that we're not used to, basically. A complete full roster that we can trust, and then going into a playoff race. It's crazy. It's great. It's fantastic. I would drink fortified whiskey, but I don't.
You don't have whiskey right now. What are you drinking right now?
Water. I've ran out of whiskey.
Okay, so that's the only reason you're drinking water is because you ran out of whiskey.
Yeah, basically. If I had a beer, I would be drinking that, but I don't.
Oh, you, sir, need to hit that liquor store because that's very unlike you to not have your whiskey ready.
I'll probably grab a 6-pack after this podcast.
Fair enough. So I'm looking at the playoff standings right now, and As we have it, the top three in the Atlantic, Boston, Tampa, Toronto, the top three in the Metro, Washington, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia. Wild card is the Islanders and Carolina, and then the teams that are on the outside looking in, Columbus tied in points with both the Islanders and Carolina, but they've played more games. They've played two more than Carolina, three more than New York.
They
And
got
then,
four. They got like four losses, or four more, or four less wins, I should say, than both of them.
yeah, they've been a beneficiary of 14 pity points this year. That's a lot of overtime losses.
Oh yeah.
And really, they haven't been. I think they've lost, I believe, 7 in a row now because they lost to Nashville yesterday, and they lost the 2 to the Flyers, and I believe they had lost 4 in a row before that. So
Yeah, they're losing, and then they're losing players to injury. So that I can commend them for how well they've done all year, but injuries are catching up. Everything's catching up to them. I just don't see them making it.
yeah, I said that in the last show. I think that they're going to be the odd team out there, and Carolina and the Islanders will end up being in. But assuming that the current 8 playoff teams end up being the teams that make the playoffs at the end of the season, where do you rank the Flyers amongst those teams? And I asked Shane this, and Shane and I discussed this, and I had the Flyers actually being the third best team amongst those. Where do you have them falling?
Probably fifth.
You have them.
I strongly think that the Flyers can handle Washington and Boston in a 7-round series. Pittsburgh might give them a bit of a struggle. Tampa always scares the shit out of me. That's why I have them fifth.
Yeah, I had Tampa first. I had Pittsburgh second. I had the Flyers third. Because I think that the Flyers, if you put them in a 7-game series against Washington, I think they would win that. It might go the distance, but I think the Flyers would just be able to outlast the Capitals in a series like that. And Boston, the Flyers have had Boston's number this year. And I think that will continue in the playoffs. I just think that line for line, they match up very well against the Bruins. Tampa's always been a thorn in the Flyers' side, especially over the past couple of years, and especially this season. Them and the Islanders really the two teams that the Flyers just absolutely cannot beat. But come playoff time, I think that the Flyers would be able to handle a team like the Islanders. I think they'd be able to handle Carolina. Pittsburgh, they've beaten them once. They've taken them to overtime another time this season. But Pittsburgh, they just turned their game up to another level in the playoffs. And that, Crosby and Malkin in the playoffs, that's always going to scare me.
Yeah.
So that's why I have Tampa and Pittsburgh 1 and 2, and then the Flyers third after that.
I would still call them fifth because, like you said, and I agree. Like we could handle Boston in the 7-round series or 7-game series, I should say. Sorry, but they have made they added your boy Kasha. They're probably going to make another move tomorrow. Washington, I think we would handle more so easily. In a 7-game series. Pittsburgh would go down to the wire. Tampa, it's the playoffs, so you never know. But yeah, I would consider us like the fifth in the conference, which is basically how the points add up. But yeah, that's just how I see it.
And as it is right now, if it stays this way, the Flyers will play the Penguins again, being that 2-3 matchup in the Metropolitan Division. So.
Yep. And of course, that's just how it's going to happen. It's just how it's going to happen.
Of course.
And the NHL will love it because it's Flyers Penguins in the playoffs. Even though their fucking playoff seeding thing, the whole playoff bracket is bullshit. But yeah.
Would you be surprised that the Flyers maybe at the end of the season, if they have the opportunity, try to tank out of that 3rd seed and into the top wild card so they maybe can play Washington instead?
No, I don't think so.
You don't see it happening?
I don't think Elaine Vigneault plays that way. I don't think Claude Giroux plays that way.
Just like fucking New Jersey and Columbus did a couple years ago.
Yeah. I don't see the Flyers doing that.
You know what? Even if they didn't, though, if they had to go up against Pittsburgh, I would feel fairly confident. Not 100% confident, maybe not even 50% confident, but maybe like 48% confident in their chances of winning that series.
Yeah, I agree. It's just crazy, and a lot of people have said that like the Flyers only make the first round, they can't advance. It's a lost season, like it's a failure of a season. I have disagreed with that, saying yes, you want to get past the first round, but if you're in the first round and it's a really close series against like a tough team like Pittsburgh would be, then I can't really call that a failure of the season. Like you just got fucked in a matchup like that. There's not much you can do about that. This is not like, hey, yeah, you made the playoffs as an 8th seed and then you lost in the first round. You fucking suck. It's a failure. It's just you made the playoffs. You lost to a division rival who is honestly maybe a little bit better than you, and you pushed it to the limit. That's not a failure to me.
You see, on one hand, I do agree with that. On one hand, I do agree that they've had a very successful season to this point. If they end up making the playoffs and, being a top 3 in the division team and they get knocked out in a tough series, yes, they have nothing to hang their heads about. But I want to see them get that extra playoff experience, find out what it feels like for a lot of these young guys to win a playoff series. It's been a long time. Couturier was on that. Couturier, Voracek, Giroux. I'm trying to think who else was on that team back in 2012, the last one to win a playoff series. I think those are the only 3. Konechny. I'm sorry, what's that?
Yeah, you're probably right.
Yeah, I think it's just those 3. And then Van Riemsdyk, obviously, was on the 2010 team that went to the Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
But, Konechny, Provorov, Sanheim, Lawton, all those guys, Michael Raffel, they haven't won a playoff series before. So I want to get those guys the experience of what it's like to go in and win a playoff series and make a run, go to the second round, go to the conference finals. Who knows, maybe even go further than that. I think it's important to get those guys that experience in the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree. But also a lot of these players do have playoff experience. Like you said, JVR was there in 2010. He was in Toronto when they, I think, both times lost to Boston in the 7th round, in the 7th game of the first round.
Both times blowing a 7th game up there.
Yeah. Hayes, he's been in the playoffs with the Rangers and the Jets, I believe. Niskanen won a cup. Provorov, he played with like a fucking broken leg, basically. And Justin Braun, obviously, a lot of years with the Sharks of a lot of failure, but at least he knows what the playoffs are like and how to win. And then even Brian Elliott, even though he's the backup, he started over Yaroslav Halak in St. Louis, which to me didn't make any sense, but hey, he still has the experience to maybe help Hart and try to give him some advice going into games.
Also, even Pitlick got his first NHL playoff taste with the Stars in their 6-game defeat last year. I believe they were playing St. Louis, and that was a 7-game series. He played in 6 of those games. But yeah, he got his taste of playoff action against St. Louis last year. So they do have a bit of playoff experience on this roster, but they could go for some more.
Yeah, and I definitely agree, and that's where I can circle back to. This is where you can make this deadline deal for a cheap player that maybe has the playoff experience, knows what it's like to get to the playoffs, even, and 4th line center, 3rd line center, maybe even like a third line winger. Doesn't matter. Just if the price is right, you make the deal.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. So some other interesting happenings in the NHL recently. How about the Zamboni driver coming in and getting the win for Carolina last night? You see any of the highlights of some of the saves that he made beating Toronto?
I feel like I saw the last save, but how embarrassing is it to lose to a team at home when their emergency goalie is your Zamboni driver? That, to me, is just the most embarrassing point of it.
I think that's just the epitome of the Maple Leafs' existence. Somebody put it was a funny tweet. Their stats since 1967, 0 Stanley Cup wins and 1 loss to a Zamboni driver.
Yeah, it's not wrong. It's an accurate stat.
Oh, man. That's pretty good. But good for him. Guy's, I think, 42 years old, I believe, is what they said.
Yeah.
He comes in and
43.
Yeah, I mean, he's got to fulfill a childhood dream. I mean, obviously being a pro goaltender is something that passed him by a long time ago, but last night, sitting around driving a Zamboni, suddenly Carolina's goaltenders go down. He gets the call, and not only does he get to play, but he gets a freaking win.
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy.
It's always a great story whenever like the emergency backup goalie gets like the win, or even comes in and plays well. But it was Chicago had the kid from Temple, I think. It was either last year or the year. And,
that's right. Yep.
Yeah, I think Florida a couple years ago, their goalie coach is Rob Tallis, who used to be an NHL goalie. He was their goalie coach and their emergency goalie. So I think he was on the bench in pads because it was like a late scratch for their goalie. But that too was funny to me. I was hoping that he would have to go in, but it didn't happen.
Man, it reminds me of that situation the Flyers had a couple seasons ago where they tried to. I think there was the game where Neuwirth passed out on the ice, and they had, I think it was Alex Lyon, I want to say, and they tried to pull him out of the game and then put the emergency guy in, but the referees wouldn't let it happen. So the Flyers, they almost had that story there, but unfortunately it wasn't able to come to fruition for them. But yeah, pretty cool seeing an emergency goalie pick up a win last night.
Yeah, definitely agree. Especially the whole story around it. It's hilarious. It's embarrassing, and it's just a great story.
Well, when it's embarrassing for the Leafs, that pretty much means that it's hilarious for the rest of the league.
Oh yeah, and I follow a lot of Leafs Twitter, so that's all I can't get away from reading about it.
I mean, hey, they helped us out the other night. They beat Pittsburgh 4-0, I think it was. How do you go from beating Pittsburgh 4-0 to losing to a Zamboni driver?
It's Toronto, man.
It's kind of crazy because they're like a pretty damn talented team up there. I just feel like they have no identity. They have no direction. They just have a whole bunch of talented players who just don't always put it together.
Yeah, I agree. I think like they're searching for a defensive defenseman, but I do like Sheldon Keefe as a coach, and they do have the talent. I think they just got to fix it, and their goaltending can't stop anything, it seems like right now. But, I'm not sad to see them fail. It's just Kasperi Kapanen on the Flyers.
There's your boy right there.
Yep.
Hey, his dad played here, so why not bring him over?
Kapanen's my favorite hockey player ever. I would love to see his son in a Flyers jersey.
Yeah. All right. Well, you have any other topics you want to touch on real quick before we finish this one up here?
Yeah, I want to go through the trade bait thing on TSN, and that's going to get some what's it called? Predictions. That's what it's called. All right, just gotta pull it up again. Trade bait. First off, Joe Thornton. Where do you think he goes?
To be honest with you, I think that he ends up probably, like you said, in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I can see Pittsburgh. Chris Kreider.
Man, that's tough because the Rangers are playing well right now. I think he stays put.
Yeah, I think if he doesn't stay put, he goes to Colorado. They have so much to give and so much cap space that I think they can make the trade for him. But Peugeot, JG Peugeot.
Peugeot, the Flyers are probably among the top destinations. I think he ends up going somewhere to the Western Conference. I could see him going maybe I'd say maybe Vegas or maybe a team like a Dallas or St. Louis.
Yeah, I could definitely see Dallas. Maybe even that. I would say Dallas or Edmonton if it's the West. Let's see. What's the next one? Ilya Kovalchuk.
Kovalchuk. That's an interesting one because he's actually played pretty well since he came back to the NHL. I know that he wants to win. I don't know if does he have any sort of trade restriction? Does he have a list of teams?
No, because he and LA terminated the contract, so he just signed like a minimum deal with Montreal, so there's no restrictions there.
To be honest with you, I wouldn't be surprised if he goes to a team at the top, a team like a Boston or a Tampa.
Yeah, I can see that. I'm just gonna go out on a
I'd
limb.
say Tampa would probably be the top destination for him.
Yeah, I know him and Boston were talking before he signed with Montreal, so I would say Boston, but my second team would probably be the Islanders. I just think it's something that they would do.
Yeah, the
Lamoriello.
Islanders could use some scoring depth.
Yeah. Let's go with one more. Derek Grant is a guy I'm kind of interested in for the Flyers, but I'm just pulling random names from this board. So Derek Grant, Anaheim. He's having a career year basically. 14 goals,
Yeah,
20.
nobody's heard
20.
about him because he's playing for Anaheim.
Yeah. But yeah. So
Um,
all right. I'll no. Let's ignore that. He's a guy that's intriguing for the Flyers. Get him on the cheap. But let's go with. I'll change that to Kyle Palmieri on New Jersey. Guys, he's got another year left on his deal.
Kyle Palmieri, another intriguing name. I could see him going to the Islanders, and if not them, then maybe he goes to Vegas. I think Vegas is in search of a little bit more offensive depth. I think that they go after a guy like a Palmieri, but I think the Islanders certainly would also be in the market for him as well.
Yeah, I can see Edmonton going real hard after him because they need secondary scoring. They need somebody to play with McDavid. That's not Zach Cashin, who's a bum, yet they extended. But I could see Edmonton going hard after him and eventually getting him.
Isn't Cassian suspended now? I think he's got like a 10-game suspension looming over him.
Yeah, yeah. And when he comes back, I guess Edmonton's hoping that they can fill in that hole and then just plug him down on like a lower line.
Yeah, I just realized it the other day looking at Edmonton's stats, just how much a bulk of the scoring is carried by McDavid and Draisaitl. Because besides those two, they really don't have anyone.
Yeah,
It's
I mean,
it's literally two guys just carrying the whole entire bulk of the scoring up there.
it's true. And Nugent Hopkins is a fine player as well. It's just they have nobody else really.
Yeah, that's why. I mean, at the beginning of the season, everybody had them chalked up as a team that could contend to win the West, and right now they're looking pretty average. They're 61 games, they've only won 32. They got 71 points. They wouldn't even be in the playoffs in the Eastern Conference.
Oh yeah, I
So
know.
really,
So
a pretty mediocre team compared to what they were expected to be at the beginning of the season.
yep, and I think that they're really getting lucky that that whole division has been pretty mediocre. I mean, the whole conference kind of has been, which is crazy. Uh,
And here's a
the
fun
East,
fact: the entire Pacific Division would miss the playoffs in the Eastern Conference.
yeah, Flyers would be first. They would be, they would be first in that division. Dallas, Colorado, and St. Louis in the Central are still above them in points, but still, the Flyers would probably be easily winning that division. It's a crazy thing, crazy
No,
years.
absolutely, absolutely.
But yeah, I don't really have any more. I'm
All
just
right.
shaking in my boots in anticipation for tomorrow.
It's gonna be a fun day, that is for certain. But in the
My
meantime,
thumb, my thumb will probably fall off searching Twitter while I'm at work.
gonna get carpal tunnel. Hit
Yeah,
that refresh button so many times.
yep.
Oh man.
I put on the tweet notifications for Bob McKenzie, Darren Dreger, and Frank Saravalli, former Flyers reporter. Um, and I told that to my coworker and Shane, and I was like, I feel like a lot of trades are going to happen this weekend. Not once happened.
Oh god. Oh man, it's gonna be a fun day. I can see myself right now. I deliver for an Amazon subcontractor. I could see myself just like every stop taking twice as long because every single stop after I get out and drop off the package, I get on my phone, I refresh Twitter, I see if anything happened. I don't know. It's gonna be interesting, that's for certain.
Don't
God,
worry, I can go full LJ and just tweet every trade to our WhatsApp.
yeah, it's be like LJ and break the news before it's even broken.
Yeah. No, I'll do that for you. So like you can, you'll just get the notification as opposed to, making it longer stops.
I'm fairly certain that LJ has his own inside sources for anything that's NFL related.
Man, the shit, I see it too, but I'm like, it doesn't matter, so I don't say anything. And then he just immediately just like, this happened. And I'm like, okay.
Oh God. You got a rage room moment of the week?
Yeah,
Let's hear
drunk
it.
me.
Drunk you? Let's hear it. This is gonna be fun.
I fucking binge drank all last weekend, and just basically I went to the same bar twice in one day, and I don't know, like I don't think I was too much of an asshole, but like I get home, I sleep, and I wake up the next day, I'm like, what the fuck did I do? I don't think I did anything wrong. I don't even
Been there before.
I don't even want to check like my bank account to see how much I paid, but yeah, it's bad. So I haven't gone to the bar since. I'm trying to take a break. But yeah, drunk me is an asshole to me.
So that's why you're not drinking. That's why you're drinking water right now because you don't want to be that drunk asshole.
No, I'll be honest, I drank today. It's just I'm out of the whiskey now.
Oh man.
But as you can tell, like I'm not fucking wasted.
Yeah, I can tell. I can tell you're a little bit. I mean, you're always pretty damn good with your hockey stuff, but you sound a little bit sharper today.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, it's because I kind of monitored it. Monitored? Monitored.
monitored.
Okay, now the drunk is sending me again.
All right. Okay, so my rage room moment of the week. Actually, it's partly to blame on myself and it's partly to blame on Wawa. Happened
Oh,
last night. I went to Wawa after work. I was on my way home, filled up my tank. I went in to get the my favorite meal from Wawa, which is the chicken strips with mac and cheese. And in addition to that, I got a smoothie. And so I go to the register, I check out, I pay for everything, right? I
yeah.
go up and Wawa always does this, by the way, so I should be used to it, which is why I partly blame myself. But they serve the smoothie and the meal, the chicken strips separately.
Yeah.
You know, they serve the smoothie over at the drink station. They serve the food up at the food station. So I was coming off a 12-hour shift to work. I was pretty damn tired. I wasn't mentally all there. I get they give me the chicken strips in that little bag or whatever it is that they give to you.
Yeah, the
And
bag, bowl in the bag.
yeah, the bowl in the bag, yep. And absent-mindedly, I just leave because for some reason something in my mind went off that like okay, the drink's in the bag too. Like, come on, why can't you just serve everything together? Make it
Yeah.
so much easier. I blame myself because I should have known. I've done it a million times. I should have known that I had to go over to the drink station to get my drink. But come on, Wawa, you just make it so much easier. Make it simpler for your customers. Just serve the entire order together at once instead of serving it separately. So
Yeah,
that's my rage room moment of
take
the
the
week.
take the 10 extra steps over to put it together.
I know, right? I mean, you're fucking being paid to do it, Wawa.
Yeah.
I'm not being paid to walk 10 steps over to your drink station. You're being paid whatever, $10, $15 an hour to walk my drink over to me while I'm getting my food.
Right?
So yeah, that's my rage room moment of the way. I had to go with something that wasn't traffic related because I feel like every single week I just rage about something, some slow driver or some shit like that. So
Well, hey, it's always applicable, I'm sure.
all right, so you got any final thoughts before we sign off here?
Um, I just want to see all the trades. I just want to see all the trades. It just gets me going. It makes me feel
Absolutely.
alive.
Bring on trade deadline. It's gonna be fun tomorrow. And my final thought is if you're looking for something to munch on while you're watching all those trades happen tomorrow, you can go to Just Food. You can find them on the phone 215-794-food. They are located at Buckingham Green in Buckingham. That is, I believe, off of York Road. And they also have a location off of 202 at Delaware Valley College in New Britain. Once again, Just Food, 215-794-food. They've got just about all the food selection that you could possibly want. Whether you're hosting a party or if you're just looking to grab a bite to eat, it is the best place to go. Once again, 215-794-food. That is Just Food. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Disciples of Ed. You can find us online on Twitter at Disciples of Ed. You can find me at radio_Rob. Steve, where can we find you?
At Schmitty324.
And you can find the Always Next to Your Podcast network, which includes dozens of other podcasts, including the one that, Steve, you were on, Whiskey Ramble. You can find the Always Next to Your Podcast network at ANY Podcast on Twitter. And you can find the Disciples of Ed on just about every podcast streaming service. You can find us on Google Podcasts. You can find us on Apple Podcasts. You can find us on Spotify, Spreaker, SoundCloud, just about anywhere you can listen to a podcast, you can find the Disciples of Ed. Anyway, we hope you enjoyed this episode, and we will be back with another one next week.
A fighting man I used to be, revered and feared through Killarney. Now I'm back to hitching with the wind. But if Mickey Flynn should ever find me, I'll throw me caution all behind me and square off on that son of a bitch again. He cracked open a river too, he beat me Sunday through and through, and such over my unconscious frame. I won me healthy sheriff fights, well lucky souls still have me life since Mickey Flynn beat me dumb and lame.